Welcome everyone to Saturday, the Voices of Black Men Round Table. Today we're taking speakers from this week to come back on Saturday and kind of talk and delve into deeper into some of the things that they talked about this week. I am super excited for today. I can't wait to get into it. Today we had two speakers to come back. That was Farad Ali and Jimmy Davies. I'm so happy to have them today. As I said, Voices of a Black Man is a platform for Black men to be able to share their story through their lens. And on Saturday, we do kind of a week wrap up, meaning that we look at differences, commonalities, and just dig a little bit deeper in some of the conversations that we've had during the week. So, Farad, Jimmy, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
So as we get going today is 4th of July, um, Independence Day, so to speak. And so I'll say happy 4th of July to both of you. As we talk today, I want to start in a place of first, those that have may not caught your interview earlier, for you to just introduce yourself.
Jimmy?
You beat me before I could say Farad. Go ahead. Well, name is Jimmy Davies, and I guess most people around here know me as with Every Dot Black. And my background has been in technology over the last 30 plus years as a computer instructor and database developer. So about 5 years ago, I started working towards using technology to help other businesses, especially minority-owned businesses, with their technology needs to promote and market them. So, and that's what we do. Every Dot Black, we do it a number of ways through social media, promoting our members, and have weekly mastermind meetings, educate our members about, or actually the general public about entrepreneurship, and directory, website, and then a podcast as well. So that's kind of a short story. That's more about the business, I guess, more than about myself, but that's what I'm really wrapped up into now. So, and more come out, I guess. I'm sure you'll bring it out. You're good at that.
Thank you, Jimmy. Farad?
Yeah, Farad Ali. I'm with Associar. So I've been in Durham working in various capacities. Been very active in the community and the community side. I do believe that there's some value in having presence in, the three most important areas of our community, which is in the community, in government, and in for-profit, and how we work those all together. So I've tried to make sure that I have a foothold or place in all those places so that it can help to build a community. I worked with the Institute for Minority Economic Development for almost 20 years. So I spent a lot of times there helping to promote and advance minority and women-owned firms to be able to get access to minority contracts. I spent the last year working for the National Minority Supply Development Council in New York, which we oversaw working with corporations, Fortune 500 corporations, getting them incorporated, working with minority businesses, ethnic minority businesses, and spent a lot of time around the whole country ensuring that we had equity from an economic justice space. And then from then, I've been fortunate enough recently to become president of a for-profit company, and we're excited we have an office in New York, New Jersey, one in Dallas, and now one in Research Triangle Park.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm excited, as I said earlier, to have both of you back on because we had some really great conversations. And now to have you together, I just can't wait. I just can't wait. So I'm going to jump right into it.
Okay.
And I want to start with families because we talk about 4th of July, and 4th of July is about when America got its independence or freedom. We know that that's not when African Americans got their independence or freedom, but it still kind of deals with family. I was thinking today, and I'm human first. I'm a female or woman second. I'm a Black female or woman third, and I'm American fourth. And that's kind of what American is still part of my family because I was born and I grew up in America. So I want to just throw that statement out, and you can change I'm a female to I'm a man, I'm a Black man, and let me know, do you agree, disagree, where do you feel, where do you land?
Boy. Well, I just think, I guess I don't really, boy, I don't know how to answer that. I'm gonna let Farad go on this one.
All right, great. So, I don't know, it depends really, the station of life where I'm at now, it's really clear to me that I am a Black man, right? Because of the way that we live. But I do tell you that I really focus on being a part of mankind. I believe that it's more important for me to identify myself as a part of the human race, from the standpoint of having the sensitivity and the commitment to want to help everyone, recognizing that there's not equity in everyone. We don't have parity, right? We don't have parity in our country. First of all, I look at myself as a part of the human race, and then quickly, you're able to slot yourself into who you perceive yourself to be, right? Male, Black, father, husband, son, all those things. So I'm blessed to have those categories. Those are not any different or any more special for me than it is for anyone else. It's just these are the characteristics or the conditions that God has placed me in to see how I do, right? So I'm trying to enjoy it as being a part of the sense of humankind, but recognizing there are some obstacles and some benefits of being a Black man in America with a family, with 2 sons and 2 daughters and a wife, and all the challenges that we live in our country.
And I can understand what he's saying, because I kind of feel the same way. I think that's why I was a little hesitant how to answer that, because I don't wake up each morning and think, oh, I'm a Black man today, So I'm just thinking, like, what's on the agenda to do today? What's on the schedule? What's next? And so, but I'm well aware, of course, I know who I am, and I don't think I'd want to change it. The experiences that I've had, I think I cherish the experiences that I had because of my color. I don't think I'd want to be any different. I couldn't imagine wanting to be any different. And then same as well, I've been blessed to really have a wonderful family support. We do a family reunion every 2 years. We've been doing that for 40 plus years, since the Roots series came out with Alex Haley decades ago. And one of my aunts, who's passed away now, she says, we need to start having a family reunion every 2 years. Kind of piggyback off of that too. One of my cousins was keeping track of the family on index cards. And he finally gave me, this maybe 10, 15 years ago, gave me all these index cards of all the family members. And I plotted it out on the computer. I plotted a huge family tree that we bring to all the reunions. And so everyone can see how they're connected to one another. And we continue to do that. And we also raise money for scholarship funds for any of the younger family members that are going to school. Wow. So anyway, I got a little sidetracked on that, but yeah, I wake up every day. I don't look at color. I just, you know it, but I don't, that's not forefront of my mind. So.
No, and so I totally understand. Yes, thank you. I know I threw you both a curveball for the first question. Like, well, wait a minute. But I felt like 4th of July, we had to talk about it. Let's just kill the elephant before we even get started today. Now I want to move further into family. You both talked about family being instrumental in your lives and being instrumental in the core, part of the core of who you are today. And so if you could share a little bit more about family, what parts of family, lessons learned, things that even today, as you're moving forward, those thoughts or those memories or those sayings come back to you. Who would like to go first?
Sure, I'll give you a break on this one. And I start off this way, and it kind of catches people off guard, but it's true. My father was born in 1892. Think about that. My father, not my grandfather. My father was born in 1892. So he was about 60 years old, 61 years. So he was about 60 years old, 61 years. I had some feedback or something.
Mm-hmm.
He was 61 years old when I was born. I don't know, we're getting feedback. And then my sister, she's 3 years younger than I am.
We're getting feedback. And then my sister, she's 3 years younger than I
am. Sorry about that.
Oh no!
Are you hearing it?
Oh no!
Yeah, I can hear it too. I'm not quite sure where it's coming from.
I'm not quite sure where it's coming from.
Okay.
Okay, let's try it now.
Okay. Well, I was just saying that he was quite, up in age, and I was his first, as far as I know. But my mother, she was about 22 years younger than he. So, and like I said, my sister's 3 years younger than I am. But when he was born in 1892, his mother died giving birth to him. And his father died by the time he was 2 years old. So he had an uncle that actually, now this was in Louisiana back in the 1890s, so you can imagine. But his uncle took him and raised him and took him to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Now, my father and his cousin say they ran off to join the service, and he actually served in World War I. But after that, he lost track of his family. And for years, now, my father, he's been deceased for quite a while, died in 1979. But for years, he didn't know what happened to his family. Years later, I learned about the Tulsa Massacre in 1921.
Years later,
Wow.
I'm stopping because I keep hearing that feedback.
Yeah, not quite sure where it's coming from
Um,
or why. Wow.
But so I never knew anyone on my father's side at all. And I wish I had asked more questions when he was alive. I just, at that time, I was much younger, didn't think about it. Now, my mother, she came from Little Rock, Arkansas, and had 4 sisters and extra brother that passed away. But all of the family I know is all from my mother's side. I'm very involved in the church. My granddad was like a deacon, helped build the church, lived to be 101 years old. I think one thing I learned from him when he was getting older into his 90s, he goes, I don't want to be 100. He says, I want to do one better than that. And he literally became 101 in October and passed away in November of that same year. Now my mother, she lived to be 102, just passed away a couple of years ago. So, and again, that's where all the family that I know of is on my mother's side. And that's where we have the family reunions every few years. I have lots of cousins to make up for what I don't know about my father's side. But now I also know if you're in Tulsa, they're doing some, digging up some of the mass burial sites. And so I've been reaching out I haven't gotten it very far so far, but I've been trying to reach out to see, was there ever a list made of the families of the people that passed away? Because they could very well be some of my relatives on my father's side. So anyway, I just thought that was an interesting story to share. And again, that's on my mother's side is where I knew everyone from my family.
Wow. So how old were you when your father passed?
I was 26 when he passed away, and he did live to see my daughter, his first grandchild. But I was in college, actually. I was in and out of school because I think I mentioned I got married early and had to go to work and come out and go back to school, go back to work. And I still remember the day. It was like one of my fraternity brothers they said they were looking for me. Didn't have cell phones back then. They were searching the campus for me. And as soon as he told me they'd been looking for me, it's like I knew he had died of cancer. And it was brought on mostly, he didn't have much education, 8th grade education, but he's a very intelligent person. But one of the things that his downfall is he drank a lot. He never could get beyond the drinking. And I just knew that I would never let that be a part of my life. I mean, I may have a drink of wine every now and then, but I just knew that I could never go down that road because of what I saw it do to my father. But anyway, so once I got the message they were looking for me, it's like I knew. I just knew. And so I went on home, and sure enough, he had passed away.
Wow. Wow. Thank you, Jimmy, for sharing your heart and that story with us. It definitely enriches this conversation because it puts a lot of things in perspective. One, growing up with a parent, and then in the 20s, you're still young. You're still so young, when you lose that parent. But were there any things that guided your life from that point on based on the time that you had with him up to your 20s?
Um, I think so. One of the things that I really admired about him, he never quit. Even when he was really ill, he was still talking about when he's going to get better and get back out there. And he always had a garden. He loved the garden. So we always, and the other thing I realized, we didn't have any money. When parents really didn't have anything, but we didn't know it as children because we never went without. We were never hungry, never always had a roof over our head, that type of thing. Always had clothes, always had the toys we wanted at Christmas time. But when he passed away, I was going through some of the papers and saw some of the tax returns, and realized like how little they earned, but they were still able to provide for us. My mother had a high school education, but neither ever went to school. And they both stressed to us, my sister and myself, my sister Kim, get an education. Get an education. That's something that no one can ever take from you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I mentioned this other day, and that whatever you want to achieve, you can achieve it. You just have to work hard enough at it, and you can do anything you want. But those two things they really stressed to us. And so I think that would be the one thing. I think the other thing is that when I was really young, I don't know if I even appreciated my father as much, but I had the chance to live in Africa for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came back, I think the entire family became closer because I think we missed one another. And small things, he loved to play dominoes. And sometimes he'd ask me to play dominoes with him. And sometimes being young, I didn't want to stop and play. I wanted to go out and hang out with my friends, that type of thing. And now I wish I had played more dominoes with my dad, while I had the chance. Things like that. So
Yeah. Wow. So that's amazing. And I think there's a hindsight of when we're young and we take things for
right.
granted, and we get older and we realize, wait a minute, I have this opportunity or that opportunity.
Exactly.
Farad, want to bring you into this conversation. Definitely family, the influence. I know you talked a lot when we had our interview about your parents and being blessed to have them, and just give us a little more insight on them and kind of what you carry with you now.
Yeah, well, fortunate enough that my parents had two different backgrounds, right? One was in a city in New York, and the other one was in South Carolina, very rural South Carolina. So I got a chance to see the two sides of America during the 60s that people talked around. So every summer they'd send me to South Carolina, where I saw racism and I saw the Jim Crow laws being enacted. My grandmother was a domestic person. I saw all my family members being farmers. Really not really educated, working in jobs that were very, very blue collar, as you can imagine, on a farm in the country, mobile homes, outdoor homes, outdoor facilities for you to use a restroom. So I got a chance to see that side in growing up, and then going to New York and seeing a much faster life, right? A much more a different life, a diverse life, while Jim Crow's laws were probably still in place, socially not as evident as it was, because they had so much inclusion with back then. The blacks were, still working in the 60s and fighting. So my grandmother actually turns 103 years old next week.
Wow.
So I'm really excited. That's on my paternal side. And that's because this is a prime example of when healthcare is able to be accessible for people in the city, whereas my grandmother died around 68 or 70. In the country, you would probably say she ate better, but the healthcare probably was not as proficient. And she ended up being on dialysis and things happened. So we moved her to New York, but by then a lot of the underlying conditions were already perpetuated. So I got a chance to see both sides, and it kind of really, it has informed me as I've done my work, right? It's informed me to the urban life of America, and it's informed me to the rural life of America and kept me sensitized to how to make sure that we help lift both sides of the community up while we build community.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. And I can imagine as a young man between New York and South Carolina, was it like summers in South Carolina, but you lived in New York?
Correct. So as soon as school was over, put me in the car. We drove, 10, 15 hours to South Carolina, dropped me off. That was my summer camp. So I learned how to pick cotton. I learned how to mow the lawn.
Wow.
I learned how to work with chickens. I learned how to do all the things that you would do in a Jim Crow place. But it was also very hard, right, for me because in the freedoms that we didn't have, that I had in New York, I really didn't have there. I always had to make sure a cousin was with me. I had to make sure I was conscientious in my environment. I had to make sure that I didn't speak out of place. Because not only would it be retributions on me, but it'd be retributions on the whole family, because it was that kind of restriction. So I began to understand how it's important to sometimes go along to get along, but to be very smart and strategic as you change policies and procedures. And that's why it's so important. I tell people politics is because when you have people in politics who understand what's going on, they're more sensitized to changing them. When they only can understand it academically, they don't get a chance to change it with the same passion and commitment to moving things forward. So I always challenge people when they're choosing their politician. I'm like, make sure they really are sensitized to your issues. Otherwise, you're going to get taken care of minimally, but you won't be taken care of as fully as you only get taken care of as much as they really understand or they're pressured.
Wow. Yeah, that definitely is so true and prevalent in today's society. We talk about things like voter suppression and the right to vote, and exercising your right to vote. And it sounds easy to exercise your right to vote, but there's a lot of obstacles for a lot of people, especially people of color, that hinder them and stop them in a lot of ways from voting. Doesn't seem like that's the case. It's just like you just go to the precinct and you vote,
Right.
And it's not always that as easy as we think it is. So I say that to ask this next question. As we're talking about things not being as easy as we think they are, you growing up versus youth growing up today.
I think when growing up, let's say grew up in Flint, Michigan, but we knew everybody, all the families on the block and probably half the next block. And all the adults, all the parents, they knew one another. So basically you did something on the next block, you're going to hear about it when you get home. We spent all of our time outdoors. There was no internet and all of that. No, even TV, very limited TV, if that at all. So we really got to know our neighbors better, I believe, back at that time. And even though it wasn't a affluent community or anything like that, it was just, I don't know, it seemed like a very close community, the whole neighborhood. Grew up with the kids, became lifelong friends with some of the people that I just grew up with, Now, when I was older, we moved to a different part of town. And I think things were a little different there, whereas the community wasn't as close, that type of thing. But growing up in my early youth, it was very much a community in the entire neighborhood. We just knew everybody knew everyone, So.
Wow. What about youth today? When you look at how you grew up and how you today are growing up, and not saying that one is bad and one is good, not saying that, but just the differences in it. What do you see?
Not just youth, but just communities. I just don't see the neighbors. Everybody's sort of more stuck to themselves. And now my daughter's 46, so I might not be the one to ask about youth today. But I did definitely see the everyone's kind of to themselves much more so, where you may not know your neighbor, but not like we did growing up, not where they wouldn't hesitate to come over if they needed something, or you go over there, sleepovers with some of the other neighborhood kids, that type of thing. That was like all the time, learn sports and things from the other guys in the neighborhood. We get out and play ball or whatever all the time. So I just don't see that today so much in today's world. And I think it's in some ways it's a sad thing that you don't see that. But anyway, that's just my personal experience.
Yeah, I see. The kids. It's. I've had a similar background to you, Jimmy, in that people knew who you were in your community, in your neighborhood, and they often told on you, even in your face, or even if it was behind your back. So you got the retribution later on for good behavior and for bad behavior.
Right.
And I saw that a lot growing up. So so that's why I tell people I'm really a product of my community. Right? It's not just my parents' investment. It was the religious community was very active in my life. The school community was active in my life. The neighborhood community is very active. So when I do things, I don't just do them on behalf of who I am and my parents. I really do it on behalf of the community, and I'm conscious of that. I'm just a product of that. The kids these days have a different way of engaging, right? So our engagement was, as Jimmy said, I didn't remember having a cell phone or computer in college, right? So these kids had both. They also had they also had the information technology behind it to make sure they stay in contact. And some of that has pulled them away from being a part, the relationships are built differently, right? So understanding how those relationships are built and groomed and grown, I'm not as familiar, nor it doesn't build a trusting relationship building process for me, but for them, they find a way to create these relationships. I'm always sensitized to them having this record of all of their behavior though, right? Because it doesn't allow for them to have some youthful indiscretion that can be monitored or disciplined or changed without it being carrying forward as a crippling them as they go forward, because it's a reminder of where they've been. So I'm sensitized to that, but I'm also really encouraged by the youth because they take the time to gather more information than we did, and they have more access to information, and it actually fuels their behavior. And so you'll find yourself engaging in discussions with today's youth where older people may feel like it's disrespectful, right? Because they just have all this raw data and they give you why they should be different or why things should be the way they should be. And really what they're doing is exercising their right to be here and understanding and how to grow and develop. So we need to really harness and really appreciate that youthful zeal and give it the power that it has to really make the change in America and in the world that we need to see for everyone.
Let me add too, and something that you just said that brought to mind. Like I said, my parents were older, when they raised us, had us, and they were not trustful of anyone white. I mean, especially my father, because of, like I say, he served in World War I, and some of the things that happened to him, I remember he said that they would like sit on the front lines and there weren't enough gas masks where who got the gas mask and who didn't, that type of thing. So he was just distrustful of anyone. And then I'm sort of in the middle as far as the time period that I was raised, living through the civil rights movement. And then the difference between that and my daughter, who was born after that period, or my granddaughter. And there's definitely a different mindset in the 3 different generations or 4 different generations. And my granddaughter, like you mentioned, the technology, she's on her phone like all the time, with her friends. They're still developing those relationships, still developing those friendships, but it's all technical, And I'm big on technology, of course I am, but I think something is lost too, because we don't bank the way we used to bank. We don't use the post office so we don't get to know people. I can do all of that from my living room. I don't need to go out to do my banking or to I can't remember the last time I mailed a letter, that type of thing, or written letter, other than just shooting off an email or text message. So I think that there are some great benefits of it, but also some downfalls. And then the last thing I would say is that, like for I am, even though the young people are being raised differently, I'm very inspired and very hopeful. I'm very inspired by what's been happening over the last couple of months, that they've rise into the occasion. Um, I don't think anything's lost. They understand the situation, and they're just saying like, "Hey, things are going to change. We're not doing this anymore."
Wow, wow. So let me ask you this then: in your youth, were you given the talk? And what is the talk? As a Black man, let me clarify. As a Black man, let me clarify.
Make sure we girl.
We're on the right talk.
You know, they say to the pure, all things are pure, right?
Right. The right talk as a Black man. Not just as a man, as a Black man.
You know, some of this is the talk and some of this is the reality, right? So it became a sense of being able to determine what's really happening. When you see a family member being accosted by the police for talking back, you realize, oh man, and then he ends up going to jail and he loses his job and his kids miss him. You start understanding, well, if he would have been quiet, he wouldn't have got arrested. If he wouldn't have got arrested, he wouldn't have gone to jail. If he wouldn't have gone to jail, he wouldn't have lost his job. You start recognizing the trickle-down effect of it because they become a part of your family. You also recognize how people with influence makes decisions on your lives, right? They make their implicit bias determines how fast you grow or don't grow. And so, you know, I've seen family members, unfortunately, have to assimilate to take care of their families, right? I told you my grandmother was a domestic worker. So that means some of the care that we may have received or some of the benefits that we may have received was because how she took care of their family, and they would maybe give her something extra or special or something that will allow for our family, from something as simple as pots and pans, right? We may have had old pots and pans and they were getting old, and they were getting in the family that she was taking care of may have been getting rid of those pots and pans, and she may have been gifted those, and it changed our lives. If she was not pleasant, she may have lost her job and not gotten those things. So you learn some of those skills. But the other part of it is it's easy to recognize and understand your station, how people treat you in all aspects of your life. So it wasn't just that seeing what was happening in society. You saw it happen in school. You saw it happening in the streets as you were moving around or going into shopping. You know, your parents would give you instructions. Make sure you keep your hands in your pockets. Look where you're going. Hold on to my hand. You know, that sense of a true, you know, I didn't understand it then, but they were really scared for us, right? They didn't want us to get hurt or lost or damaged. They treated us like really precious jewels, and their overbearingness was important to us. We thought it was too much control and oversight, but really it was protection, right? And so we became less protective as we gotten older and moved into adulthood of our children because we've taught them the skills to move forward. But at the time, our parents was as scared for us as they were for them. I mean, the truth of the matter, right? If they made a wrong move, it heavily impacted how we were to go forward. So the talk was not a sit down, let me talk to you. It was, let me talk with you along the process. So along the way, you kept learning these lessons and skills that accumulated to how to understand the culture and the rules and how to play.
Yeah, growing up, like I said, my parents, my mother was from Little Rock, Arkansas. Now, we didn't go every summer, but there were summers where I would spend in Little Rock. And I remember my aunt, one of my aunts that was living there, she was telling us things like, you know, how to walk down the street and just like not making eye contact, all this stuff. And I didn't take it seriously. I just thought it was like, you know, what is all of this? Are we supposed to? But she was concerned for us. Looking back on it, she was just concerned for us that we didn't, you know, have some encounter, you know, the bad ending, that type of thing. Also, just the concern that they had. Another example, when Barack Obama first ran for president, Now, my mother, she was 102, just passed away a couple of years ago. So I'm not sure how old she was exactly at that time, maybe around 90 or so, I don't know. But anyway, he was running for president. She said, I'm not voting for Barack Obama. I'm not voting for him. And my sister and I are like, why not? Because they're going to kill him. There's no way they're going to let him become president. We can't vote for him. Now, once he started winning, and once she started seeing, then we called her CNN, because if anything Barack Obama did, she got his book. She could tell you verbatim everything. I got her one of his books. She bought one of the other books, and she read his books. When he was running for office and she was here in North Carolina, I took him to hear him, when he was over at UNC. Mm-hmm. And so then from that point on, but in the beginning, she literally did not want a Black person to run for president because she was convinced that he would be killed. But like I said, once he started winning, and she came around. So.
Wow. I mean, and that just, I had a lady tell me, we were walking in a funeral, going to the gravesite, and I was kind of helping her along, elderly lady, and she looked at me and she said, your husband's going to be president one day. I said, well, what if I want to be president? She said, no, ma'am, I don't want a woman president. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. Almost in the same way, as you're talking about with your mom, of just kind of what we've grown up with, what we know to be true. And those odds are stacked so high and so dangerous that it's like, no, we don't need that either. I just told her okay, and I kept walking with her. I helped her. Right. I didn't push her over or nothing. I helped her where we had to go. I just said yes, ma'am, and kept going. So now, this has been great. Black leadership. I want to talk just a little bit about Black leadership as we kind of wrap things up. When I look now at the age that I am, I'm 43. I'm in my 40s, and
quit lying.
I know, right? We'll talk about it later. Okay, all right. But I look now and I say, where are our leaders? Where are our leaders? Because all of the leaders that we've had in the Black community, they're older. They've been our leaders from when I was young to now, and before I was born to now. And I look and I say, well, where's our Black leaders? What's happening in our community to help us continue to move forward? Those voices that we're hearing as we see this movement, the Black Lives Matter, and whatever it will evolve into and become, who's the new leaders? Definitely we can talk about young people being leaders, right? We've seen a lot of them step up and be leaders, but then we want to talk about experience as well. Some of the wisdom that you guys have talked about, just that comes with experience. So I'm not counting anybody out, but I'm throwing that question to you guys as we look at leadership. Where do we go from here?
Boy, that's a good question. I think they're there. I think situations will always generate or make the leaders that are needed for the time. But I know what you mean, though. A lot of the people that are quote unquote leaders, maybe just because it's a different time. Back in the day, like during the Civil Rights Movement, we could name the leaders, the Martin Luther King, the Jesse Jackson, that time, Malcolm X. But maybe it's because it's just different time. I know they're still there. But I don't know. I have to think about that one.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've seen. I grew up. I grew up in this culture where it looked like leadership was like a pyramid, where the top kind of helped to influence the bottom.
Yeah.
And now I'm seeing leadership from the bottom rising to the top, and it's really a beautiful thing. I think there's an opportunity for us to do a better job in collaborating our leadership so that we can have the wisdom of the sages and the elders to help make sure that we take the advancing of the technologies or the forethoughts of the young people to go forward. I'm inspired by new leadership. I mean, um, when I ran for mayor, I was happy to see like Pierce was in the race, right? Because I think he has the opportunity to go forward. But at the same time, I think we need to also make sure we nurture and groom our leaders to be successful, because it's the there is still, I believe, and I could be wrong, that if we fail in leadership, there's this implicit bias to we tried, right? Or you had your chance. And we see some of that now, right? People thought, okay, well, we've had a person in place and now we want to switch that person, diametrically changed it, right? So we went from, if you look at the president of the United States, a young Black man, educated, and all his qualities, to someone who's different, right? Older, white man, Republican, different kind of values. And so the shift went like this. And we see some of that in our state leadership and some of that in our city leadership or county leadership. And there's been these changes. So I don't think change is bad for leadership. And that's also true in corporations and nonprofits. It's a way to have I think there is a transition period in leadership, though, we need to master, because the people that are ultimately affected are the people at the end, right? They are the ultimate recipient of that service. If it's national leadership, or if it's nonprofit leadership, or if it's business leadership, are adversely affected by the mindset or the thoughts of the current leader, because they can change things as they happen. So I think having a clear transition plan or clear understanding of how we go forward will help to make sure that we have some consistency. And I think when people feel secure in that consistency, they're even more creative, they're more successful, their collaboration builds more confidence, and ultimately it builds more trust as a leader. Because when you really look at what happens in our communities, where we get hurt is when people don't trust the leaders, right? And when you don't have the trust in the leader, then you don't understand the game, you don't understand the rules, and you really don't know how to play, because you've got to learn that. And sometimes as you go through that process, you may uncover, oh man, I wish I would have known. I wouldn't have voted for him or gave to him or supported him or her in that process, for business, nonprofits, or in government, right? So I think it's important that whatever the leadership style is, that we find some foundational, we build some security in the ultimate work, that the people who may be the recipients or the benefactors of that leadership are not adversely affected from change in leadership, but they should be encouraged and inspired to continue the good things that are going forward.
Wow. So, if that's the case, and we're encouraging, we're looking at embracing technology, the youth in the technology, the older with wisdom, right? And kind of combining all of those things together. I definitely can see a different mix than what we're used to. That pyramid that you talked to, I definitely can see a different mix. And I think that there's room for everyone to have some type of say, to be able to build. So say that we find this person or these persons, that we say, okay, if we're going to be consistent, we've got all of these things in place. I think we talked about this week, I know we talked about everyone has a place. And I think it was with you, Farad, when we talked about at the table, whether it's a table you built or a table that you're invited to, that there is a place for everyone, and everybody can't be at the table. But and we use the analogy of a game, that there's the players on the field, there's the cheerleaders, there's the coach, there's the fans in the stand, all of them. If we think of that as community, that is everyone having a part in inside in whatever that part is. So there has to be someone, even though we say as a group, yes, we can lead, but there has to be ultimately someone or a group of someone's, right, that kind of is the voice in the community. because everyone has different ideas, and it's not that everyone's ideas are wrong. It's just they have to be put in a place where they can be carried out in a wise, that wisdom that you talked about, a wise way to get the results that we're looking for. So how do we then build consistency, and how do we then find who those leaders are to help, whether it's on the community, the local, the state, the national, in government, in corporations, wherever that may be? How are they identified, number one? And then number two, how do we help to build the consistency so that they can move forward in the way that they need to?
You're asking some hard questions.
I know.
I'm a technology guy. But I will say this. I believe that the leaders will be coming from places we don't expect, because this is a global world now. And I think one of the things that really stood out over the protests over the last 3 months, however long it's been, is that you had worldwide participation. There are more people in Berlin, Paris, London, that are protesting. And I think the communication, the technology piece has made that possible, where everything, we see and feel everything immediately. So who knows that there may be some African young lady, young man in some village someplace that is an internet access away from being our next world leader. It's no longer, we have to broaden our thought process about what community is anymore. That's just my feeling. I've always felt that, and I could see it coming. Location doesn't matter anymore. Geography is irrelevant. It really is. You can literally reach people at a moment's notice. And if your message is a good one that people can relate to, respond to, our next world leader could come from any place on the globe, literally. So now, as far as the consistency, I don't know. I don't know. But I do think that we have to think on a broader level as far as leadership now.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think leaders are going to come from everywhere. Actually, I think everyone's a leader at this point. There's no long. I think there used to be a model of being a leader, making sure that you had good followers. I think the new model is really like being a leader and having a bunch of other leaders with you, right? There's this strength. We see this in athletics, right? It's no longer one superstar. It's like 3 or 4 superstars being on the team, because you want to make sure that we win. So I think as a community, we need to learn how to embrace leaders with different expertise, because I really do believe God gives us talents that make us experts in our space, right? Let those who feed, feed. Let those who serve, serve. Let those who cook, cook. Let those who preach, preach. Let those do what they do, because when they're in their lane, they're their best. And so if we can learn to appreciate the fingers, right? Every finger has a job. How do we strengthen each finger so that we become the fist in our community to be powerful and not find ourselves who's next and what's this and all that? Just whoever's best for right now, let them go. Because if I believe they're going to work in the best interest of my community, particularly in the spaces that we need, right? So if we need healthcare, we need a healthcare leader. If we need economic development, it'd be right to have an economic development leader. If we need education, we need to show, because these people have been trained and talented and had experience, and if we believe in that, we need to encourage them and push them forward. And if it's in arts or whatever it may be, I'm really encouraged about the future, especially this new group of people. And I also really believe that until the system is broken, because the system is real, that we continue to use both sides of this puzzle, because it's no longer a finite game. It's more of an infinite game. And an infinite game has a different way of playing. You're no longer playing 2D, you're playing 3D and 4D and 5D. And the people who are oppressing the system have mastered the way of recognizing how to play at the highest level. And so we need to make sure we have our best players playing to make sure that we can compete and win.
Thank you, gentlemen. This has been an amazing discussion. I'm not going to hold you on your Saturday any longer. I have enjoyed. I thank you for your comments. I thank you for sharing your heart and more of your story through your lens. I want to give you time now to really just whatever's on your heart, whatever you want to end with. Um, who wants to go first?
I'll go, I guess, for us being quiet there. um, I want to thank you, Sherelle.
Yeah.
That's what's been on my heart this week. I didn't get to hear all of the interviews. I did hear part of Faraz, and I did hear part of the one on Thursday, I believe it was. I didn't hear yesterday's or Monday's. But I think what you're doing, the concept, I think is really needed right now. I think I told you already, you hit a home run with this one. And I know you've got a number of other people coming up over the next few weeks that you're going to be interviewing. So I just want to encourage people to listen to what you're creating. I think that it will open some eyes because, like you said, in your introduction, we're not all the same. I think you'll see. I think it's going to let people that are not in our community see that we're just all people. We're all just people. So I just want to close with that. I just want to thank you for what you're doing to share our stories with the world. So thank you.
Yeah, I like to edify that because I do believe these voices, our voices, other voices are muted or unheard or unseen or unappreciated and devalued and all of those things. And, people may not say it, but they do it, right? Because you can see the outcomes of it. So particularly as a Black woman, I just got to really give you much love because I think being able to lift up, Black women have always been the foundation for Black men in a way of, most Black men, the first person they fell in love with was their mother. Right. So, to have women come back to turn around, to say, hey, we're going to uplift this group of people to give them voice, and not just to give voice to still tell stories, but really, I know you're trying to make impact, right? You want things to change, and you're not doing this for fun. You're doing this because you would like to create some change. So I thank you for standing in the gap, seeing a need, solving the need, feeling the need, and being really committed to it. That you may not see the fruits of your labor from the seeds that you're planting, the trees that are going to come up, and the fruit that they're going to bear. But I promise you, the impact of this will probably do some things that will allow there to be the next group of leaders to be more informed and more engaged. So thank you. I really do. I've had the same thing on my heart all week too, Jimmy. I was like, what do I send her flowers? Do we send her gifts? Do we send her money? But really, thank you for what you're doing. And I think you'll be blessed abundantly.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Farad, for that. I really appreciate it. It's what you said, Farad. I'm just in my lane, just doing what I can in my lane, and it's what Jimmy said earlier this week is you have an idea, go for it. Just try it. And you don't know if you're going to fail or if it's going to work or anything until you go for it. And for me, men in general, as a Christian, that's the head of the family. And then when I talk about Black men, and I bring it down to Black men, I know that you guys have gotten a rotten bag for years and years, hundreds and hundreds of years. You've gotten a rotten bag that leaves spoils in ways that has caused all kinds of scars, mentally, physically, emotionally, throughout the history of Black families. Only just trying to be the best that you can be, to go out and work hard, provide for your family, love, but get back in return hate. And so for me, it was a place that, you're right. For me, it's a call to action for me. You know, I say it at the end of every one of these that I do, is that you heard, you've listened. Now it's up to you to look at your own biases and figure out what actions you want to take from there. You know, I don't impose anything on anybody else. I think it's up to each and every one of us to look at ourselves first and then as a group. And so I thank you both. I am humbled and I am honored. And I say it over and over, but I mean it from my heart. The response that I've gotten from the two of you, from the other speakers that are in this series, and who knows where this is going to go. But thank you. Thank you so much for just being open enough and trusting me enough to have the conversation with me, no matter how hard the questions came. So I thank you both for being on today, and I thank you, the viewer, for watching today. Hopefully this roundtable discussion gave you a deeper dive into thoughts, ideas, again, for you to look at your own biases, to find connections and commonalities in places where you are alike, whether it's through the way they talked about growing up, what they think about leadership, community, or just being a human at the very level of being a human. You know, my concept is simple. You meet at the human level first, and from there we can find commonalities. It's so easy just to start with differences, but differences tear us apart. It's when we see each other at the human level and realize that we're already have things in common that we can find more commonalities. So thank you for watching The Voices of a Black Man. To Farad Ali and Jimmy Davies, thank you so much for being on. And to your viewers, I hope you continue to tune in as we continue this series, The Voices of a Black Man, 12 p.m. Eastern every single day. And I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Take care. All right, good sirs. Everybody is out. We have stopped recording.
I think we lost Farad.